Ethan Miller considered himself a good judge of people. At 35, he believed experience had sharpened his instincts. Years in corporate sales had taught him how to read faces, tones, clothes, posture, everything. One glance, and Ethan felt he could tell you who someone was. Successful, lazy, trustworthy, useless. He didn't say these judgments out loud. Of course, he wore them quietly, like invisible glasses that colored everything he saw. That morning, as Ethan walked into a small neighborhood cafe on the edge of town, those glasses were firmly on. The cafe wasn't too fancy. Wooden tables, soft music, a chalkboard menu written in uneven handwriting. It was the kind of place people went when they wanted quiet, not speed. Ethan ordered his coffee and scanned the room while waiting. That's when he noticed him. A man sat alone near the window, worn jacket, scuffed shoes, messy hair with strands of gray. His hands were rough, his posture slightly hunched, like life had leaned on him for too long. Ethan felt the judgment rise automatically. Probably unemployed. Maybe irresponsible. Another guy who let life pass him by. The man stared out the window, holding his coffee with both hands, unmoving. Ethan smirked inwardly. Some people just don't try, he thought. Moments later, Ethan's phone buzzed. An email from his boss, reminding him about an important presentation later that week. Stress tightened his chest. He glanced back at the man by the window and felt oddly irritated by him, by the stillness, by the quiet. By the way, he seemed to exist without urgency. Must be nice not to care about deadlines, Ethan thought. When Ethan grabbed his coffee and turned to leave, he nearly collided with the man as he stood up. "Oh, sorry," the man said quickly, his voice calm and polite. Ethan nodded stiffly and walked past him without another word. He never imagined that this brief moment, this careless judgment, would come back to challenge everything he believed about people. The presentation was for a major client, a renowned architecture firm looking to partner with Ethan's company. This was the deal that could define his career. Ethan walked into the boardroom feeling prepared, confident. He set up his laptop, greeted the executives, and then the head of the firm walked in. Ethan's smile froze. It was the man from the cafe. His name was Arthur Vance. He was not unemployed or irresponsible. He was the founder and lead architect of one of the most respected firms in the country. The worn jacket, his favorite, a gift from his late wife. The scuffed shoes, from a recent visit to a muddy construction site. The rough hands. They had built models and sketched masterpieces for decades. The hunched posture, a result of long hours spent over design tables, creating buildings that inspired millions. Arthur Vance looked at Ethan, a flicker of recognition in his eyes, and smiled warmly. "Ready to begin, Mr. Miller?" he asked, his voice the same calm, polite one from the cafe. Ethan's mind raced. All his assumptions, his confident judgments, shattered into a million pieces. He had looked at a brilliant, hard-working man and seen only failure. The presentation began, and Ethan's voice was shaky at first. He spoke about trust, partnership, and understanding, value words that now tasted like hypocrisy in his mouth. It felt small, not because of Arthur Vance's status, but because of his own blindness. He had judged the cover and had been completely, utterly wrong about the book. After the presentation, Arthur approached him. He seemed a bit flustered. "Everything all right?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Mr. Vance," he started, "I need to apologize. I saw you at the cafe this morning and I made some unfair assumptions about you." Arthur's smile didn't falter. He simply nodded. "We all wear glasses that color our world, Mr. Miller. The important thing is realizing when it's time to take them off and just see." Ethan didn't know if he would get the deal, but as he left the building, he felt a profound shift inside him. He had walked in that morning thinking he knew how to read people, and he walked out knowing he had just started learning. He took off his invisible glasses and, for the first time in a long time, he just saw. He saw people, not labels, and the world looked so much bigger, so much more interesting, and so much more human. 2 days later, Ethan found himself back at the same cafe. It wasn't planned. It just sort of happened. He needed a break from the constant noise of his life, the emails, the meetings, the relentless expectations. The cafe was quieter this time, and there he was again. The man from before. Same seat, same worn jacket. But something was different. The man wasn't just staring out the window. He was talking to a young woman sitting across from him. She looked nervous, twisting her fingers in her lap. Ethan ordered his coffee and chose a nearby table, close enough to overhear snippets of their conversation. "I don't think I'm strong enough," the young woman said, her voice trembling. The man just listened, his attention completely on her. No phone, no distractions, just pure focus. "You don't need to be strong forever," he said gently. "You only need to be strong for today." The woman's eyes welled up with tears. Ethan froze, his coffee halfway to his lips. This was not what he expected. The man continued, his voice steady but warm. "When my daughter was sick, I learned something important," he said. "Fear grows when you face it alone, but when you share it, it loses its power." Ethan's chest tightened. "Daughter." The woman wiped her eyes. "What happened to her?" The man paused for a long moment. "She passed away 5 years ago." A heavy silence filled the space between them. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. "I used to think pain ended life," the man continued softly, "but it doesn't. It changes it. If you let it, pain can turn you into someone who understands others more deeply." The woman nodded slowly, her breathing calmer now. "Thank you," she whispered. "I really needed this today." The man gave her a tired but sincere smile. After she left, he sat alone again, his gaze returning to the world outside the window. Ethan stared at his own coffee, now cold. The harsh judgments he'd made just days before felt suddenly small and embarrassing. A quiet voice in his head whispered, "You don't know anything about him." He hesitated. Then, for the first time in what felt like years, Ethan did something completely out of character. He got up and walked over to the man's table. "Excuse me," Ethan started awkwardly. I couldn't help overhearing." "What you said, it mattered." The man looked up, surprised, but offered a polite smile. "Thank you. I'm glad it helped someone." Ethan sat down without being invited. "I'm Ethan." "Daniel," the man replied, extending his hand. They shook. An uncomfortable but honest pause hung in the air. "I owe you an apology," Ethan blurted out. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "For what? For judging you?" Ethan admitted, feeling a flush of shame. "I did it without knowing you. I realize now I do it all the time." Daniel studied him for a moment, then let out a soft chuckle. "We all do." Ethan exhaled, a weight lifting off his shoulders. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. What do you do?" Daniel leaned back, his gaze shifting toward the window. "I used to be an emergency room nurse. For almost 20 years. Ethan blinked. "Used to be. I left after my daughter died," Daniel explained calmly. "I couldn't walk into a hospital without reliving it all." "I'm sorry," Ethan said quietly. "So am I," Daniel replied. "But grief taught me something that no school ever could." "What's that?" "That everyone you meet is fighting a battle you can't see." Daniel's eyes softened. The angry man at the store, the quiet woman on the bus, the person who looks like they've failed at life. He paused, looking directly at Ethan. "You never know what they've survived." In that moment, Ethan felt something crack open inside him. He thought about how quickly he labeled people, how easily he dismissed strangers, how often he mistook appearance for reality. He had spent his life looking at the world, but today, for the first time, he felt like he was finally beginning to see it. "And now?" Ethan asked. "What do you do now?" Daniel smiled faintly. "I sit here," he said. "I listen. I talk to people who need it. I volunteer at a grief center." He lives slower. Ethan swallowed hard. All this time, he had mistaken stillness for failure. He saw a man sitting in a cafe and assumed he was doing nothing with his life. He didn't see the journey, the loss, the healing. He only saw a single, incomplete snapshot. A week later, Ethan stood in front of his office conference room, his turn to present. His palms were sweaty. His heart raced. For the first time in his career, it felt unsure, Not about his work, but about himself. The pressure to perform to be the best felt suffocating. He thought of Daniel. He thought about that simple, powerful idea. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you can't see. When Ethan finally began his presentation, something shifted. He wasn't just reciting facts and figures. He wasn't trying to impress or dominate the room. He was trying to connect. He paused, looked up from his notes, and really saw the people in front of him. He spoke, slower. He listened to their questions with genuine curiosity. He watched their faces instead of just rushing through his slides. It was less of a performance and more of a conversation. Afterward, his boss pulled him aside. "You are different today, Ethan," she said, with a curious look. "More human." Ethan smiled. A real, genuine smile. That one word, human, felt like a greater accomplishment than any deal he had ever closed. That evening, he returned to the cafe, hoping to share this small victory with Daniel. But Daniel wasn't there. He checked the next day, and the day after that. Daniel was gone, but the lesson he left behind stayed, planted firmly in Ethan's mind. Ethan started noticing the world differently. It was like his vision had changed. He saw the cashier at the grocery store, not as a slow inconvenience, but as someone exhausted, maybe working a second job. He saw his quiet coworker, not as antisocial, but perhaps as someone carrying a heavy burden at home. He saw the man sitting alone on a park bench, and instead of judging, he wondered what his story might be. Instead of assuming, he started listening, not just with his ears, but with his heart. Months later, driven by this newfound perspective, Ethan started volunteering at the same grief center Daniel had mentioned. He was nervous at first, unsure if he had anything to offer, but he remembered Daniel's words. "I listen. I talk to people who need it." So that's what he did. He sat. He listened. He offered a quiet space for others to share their stories. He never saw Daniel again. But in a way, he didn't need to. Daniel had already given him something far more valuable than answers. He gave him awareness. We judge people in seconds. We see a snapshot and write an entire story. We label someone as lazy or unfriendly or a failure based on a single moment. But understanding, true understanding, takes time. It takes effort. The truth is simple and uncomfortable. You don't know what someone has lost. You don't know what they've survived. You don't know what invisible weight they are carrying on their shoulders every single day. So before you label someone, before you dismiss them, before you decide you know exactly who they are, just pause, take a breath, think. Because kindness begins right where judgment ends, and sometimes the people we misunderstand the most are the very ones who have the most to teach us. If this story made you think differently about people, like the video and subscribe to the channel, and maybe share it with someone who needs this gentle reminder today. Remember, every story has a lesson, and every person has a story. Thank you for listening.